The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store in Truckee, California, and Theresa Dalton stepped down onto the dusty street with her carpetbag clutched in one gloved hand, her heart hammering against her ribs as she surveyed the rough mountain town that was supposed to become her new home in this summer of 1878. She had traveled all the way from Philadelphia, responding to an advertisement placed by a rancher named Jacob Brennan, who had written that he needed a wife to help manage his growing cattle operation in the Sierra Nevada foothills. The correspondence had been brief and businesslike, which suited Theresa just fine at 34 years old. She was not some starry-eyed girl expecting romance. She had been married before, widowed young at 22, and had spent the last 12 years working as a seamstress and caring for her aging mother until the woman passed 6 months ago. The life she left behind held nothing but memories and empty rooms. But as she stood there in the afternoon sun, watching miners and loggers mill about the muddy streets, she felt a flutter of doubt. What did she truly know about this Jacob Brennan? His letters had been polite but sparse on personal details. He had mentioned he was established, owned land, and needed a practical woman who would not mind the isolated life. She had assumed he was perhaps in his 40s or 50s, a widower like herself looking for companionship and help rather than passion. A young man approached her, removing his hat to reveal sandy hair and a boyish face that could not have seen more than 25 summers. "Excuse me, madam. Would you be Miss Theresa Dalton?" She blinked at him. "I am. Are you here on behalf of Mr. Brennan?" "No, madam. I am Mr. Brennan." "Austin Brennan. Call me Austin, please." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look even younger. Theresa felt her stomach drop. This could not be right. "I apologize, but there must be some mistake. I am here to meet Jacob Brennan." The young man's smile faded slightly. "That was my father, madam. He passed away 2 months ago. Heart gave out while he was mending fence. I have been meaning to write you, but truthfully, I did not know if you would still come if you knew the circumstances had changed. I kept up the correspondence in his name because, well, I still need a wife. The ranch needs a woman's hand, and I cannot manage it all alone." Theresa stared at him, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "You deceived me." "I did, and I am sorry for it." Austin met her eyes directly, and she saw genuine remorse there along with something else, perhaps desperation. "But I am asking you to give me a chance anyway. I know I am not what you expected. I am 26 years old, and I understand that is considerably younger than you probably thought. But I inherited my father's ranch, and it is a good piece of land. I can provide for a wife. I am honest and hardworking, and I need help." "I am 34 years old," Theresa said flatly, her voice tight with embarrassment and anger. "I am too old for you. This is completely inappropriate. You should be looking for a young woman who can give you children and years of companionship." Austin stepped closer, his hat still in his hands, his expression earnest. "With respect, madam, you are exactly the age I need. I do not want some girl who expects me to court her with flowers and poetry. I do not have time for games. I need a partner who understands hard work and sacrifice. Someone who has lived enough to know what matters. My mother died when I was 12, and my father raised me alone on that ranch. He taught me the value of a good woman, one with sense and strength. That is what I am looking for." Theresa felt something shift inside her chest, though she was not ready to name it. She looked away, watching a freight wagon rumble past. "You still should have told me the truth." "You are right, I should have. And if you want to get back on that stage and head home, I will pay your fare and give you extra for your trouble. But I am asking you to stay, at least for a few days, and see the ranch. See what kind of life I am offering. Then make your decision." She turned back to him, studying his face properly now. He had honest eyes, blue as the mountain sky, and there was a steadiness in his bearing that suggested he was older than his years in the ways that mattered. His shoulders were broad from physical labor, his hands calloused and strong. He looked nothing like her first husband, who had been a clerk with soft hands and softer ambitions. That marriage had been comfortable but passionless, ended too soon by typhoid fever. "A few days," she heard herself say, "but I make no promises beyond that." Relief washed over Austin's features. "That is all I ask. Thank you, Madam. Theresa," she said. "If we are to consider this arrangement, you should call me Theresa. Theresa." He said her name carefully, as if testing how it felt. Then he smiled again, and she noticed how it reached his eyes. "Let me get your trunk." The ride out to the Brennan ranch took nearly an hour, the wagon following a rough track that climbed into the forested hills east of Truckee. Austin handled the horses with easy confidence, and as they traveled, he pointed out landmarks and told her about the area. The railroad had come through just 7 years earlier, he explained, bringing growth and change to the region. His father had been one of the early settlers, claiming land and building up a cattle operation that now ran about 200 head. "It is not the biggest spread in the territory," Austin said, "but it is ours, free and clear. No debt. My father believed in paying as you go." "A wise philosophy," Theresa replied, holding onto the wagon seat as they bounced over a particularly rough section of road. "He was a wise man in most things." Austin's voice grew quieter. His death was sudden. One moment he was working, the next he was on the ground. Doctor said it was quick, that he probably did not suffer much. "I am grateful for that, at least." "I am sorry for your loss." "Losing a parent is never easy, no matter your age." "Thank you. I know you lost your mother recently, too. That was in one of your letters to my father." Theresa nodded, surprised he had read the correspondence. She had been ill for some time. "It was a blessing in the end, though I miss her." "And your husband? You mentioned you were widowed." 12 years ago now. We were married young and he died young. Life moved on." She kept her voice neutral, not wanting to delve too deeply into those old sorrows. Austin nodded respectfully and did not press for more details. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Theresa found herself studying the landscape. It was beautiful country, with tall pines and firs crowding the hillsides and glimpses of snow-capped peaks in the distance. The air was crisp and clean, so different from the sooty atmosphere of Philadelphia. When they finally rounded a bend and the ranch came into view, Theresa felt a small spark of something like hope. The main house was a sturdy log structure with a covered porch and a stone chimney. It was not large, but it looked well maintained. Beyond it stood a barn, a smokehouse, and several smaller outbuildings. Cattle grazed in fenced pastures, and a vegetable garden grew beside the house. Though it looked somewhat neglected, Austin pulled the wagon to a stop near the porch. "It is not much, but it is home." "It is lovely," Theresa said honestly. She had expected something much more primitive. He helped her down from the wagon, his hands steady at her waist, and for a moment they stood close together. Theresa caught the scent of him, leather and pine and honest sweat, and she felt an unexpected flutter low in her belly. She stepped back quickly, flustered by her own reaction. "Let me show you inside," Austin said, seeming not to notice her discomfort. The interior of the house was rustic, but clean. The main room served as kitchen and living area combined, with a large fireplace dominating one wall and a sturdy table and chairs in the center. Austin had clearly made an effort to tidy up, though masculine disorder was evident in the dishes stacked haphazardly on the shelves and the mending piled in a basket by the door. "There are 2 bedrooms," Austin said, gesturing to the doors on the far wall. "The larger one was my father's." I have been using it since he passed, but you can have it. I will take the smaller room. That hardly seems fair if this is your house now. If you agree to marry me, it will be your house too. You should have the better room. Theresa walked to the window and looked out at the mountains rising beyond the pastures. Everything about this situation was irregular and strange, yet she could not deny that something about the ranch called to her. Perhaps it was simply the beauty of the setting, or perhaps it was the quiet promise of a new beginning far from everything she had known. "I should tell you honestly what I can offer," Austin said from behind her. "The ranch is profitable enough to support us comfortably. You would not want for necessities, though we will not be wealthy. The work is hard, especially during calving season and roundup. The winters are brutal up here in the mountains. We can get snowed in for weeks at a time. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles away, and Truckee is an hour by wagon. It can be lonely." She turned to face him. "I am not afraid of hard work or solitude, but you still have not addressed the question of age." "What question is that?" "You are 12 years younger than me, Austin. People will talk. They will assume things about both of us, none of it kind." He crossed his arms over his chest, his jaw setting in a stubborn line. "Let them talk. I learned a long time ago that other people's opinions do not keep you warm in winter or help you run a ranch. What matters is what works for us." "And what about children? Surely you want a family." "If God blesses us with children, I will be grateful. If not, I will accept that too. My father always said that worrying about things you cannot control is a waste of time better spent on things you can." "Your father sounds like he was full of wisdom." "He was." Austin's expression softened. "He would have liked you, I think. He always said a smart woman was worth her weight in gold." Theresa smiled despite herself. "Flattery will not win me over that easily." "It is not flattery if it is the truth." She studied him for a long moment, trying to imagine what a life here would be like. Could she truly consider marrying this man who was young enough to be, well, not her son certainly, but perhaps her much younger brother? The very idea should have been absurd. Yet standing here in this house, looking at his earnest face, it somehow did not feel absurd at all. "I would like to stay for a few days as we discussed," she said finally. "I can help with the household tasks and get a sense of the place. Then we can both decide if this arrangement will work." Relief flooded Austin's face again. "That is more than fair." "I will sleep in the barn tonight so you can have your privacy." "That is not necessary. You said there are 2 bedrooms. I trust you to be a gentleman." He nodded solemnly. "You have my word on that." The first full day at the ranch, Theresa woke before dawn to the sound of Austin moving around in the kitchen. She dressed quickly in one of her practical work dresses and emerged to find him stoking the fire in the stove. "I am sorry if I woke you," he said. "I am used to starting early." "I am an early riser myself." She moved to the counter where she had noticed a bag of coffee beans the night before. "Let me make breakfast. You should go tend to your animals." He looked like he wanted to protest, then thought better of it. "I would appreciate that, thank you." After he left, Theresa set about exploring the kitchen properly. The supplies were basic but adequate. She ground coffee, found eggs in the cold cellar, and located a side of bacon hanging in the smokehouse. By the time Austin returned an hour later, she had a full breakfast laid out on the table, along with fresh coffee and biscuits she had made from the stores of flour and lard. Austin stopped in the doorway, staring at the table. "I cannot remember the last time someone cooked breakfast for me." "Sit," Theresa said simply. "Eat before it gets cold." They sat across from each other, and Theresa watched as Austin ate with the focused intensity of a man who usually took meals as fuel rather than pleasure. But when he bit into one of her biscuits, he closed his eyes briefly. "These are incredible," he said. "Light as air. My mother taught me to bake. I am glad the skill has not abandoned me." They ate in companionable silence for a while. Then Austin said, "I thought today I could show you around the property properly. Let you see the full scope of what the ranch entails." "I would like that." They spent the morning riding the fence lines on horseback, Austin on his sturdy roan gelding and Theresa on a gentle mare he said had been his father's. She had learned to ride as a girl, though it had been years since she had been on a horse, and the first few minutes were awkward. But it came back to her quickly, and soon they were moving at an easy pace through the pastures. Austin talked about his plans for the ranch, how he wanted to improve the breeding stock and perhaps expand into horses as well as cattle. He spoke with passion and knowledge, and Theresa found herself genuinely interested. This was not just a job to him, she realized. It was a calling, a way of life he loved deeply. "Your father taught you well," she observed as they stopped near a creek to let the horses drink. "He taught me everything about ranching," Austin agreed, "but there is so much he did not have time to teach me about other things." He had been planning to find a wife, someone who could help with the domestic side while he focused on the cattle. That was why he placed the advertisement, and you chose to continue his plan rather than make your own. Austin turned in his saddle to look at her directly. "I chose to continue it because I realized he was right. I cannot do this alone. I need a partner. A business partner. A life partner," he corrected gently. "I will not lie and say I am offering you grand romance, Theresa. I do not know you well enough yet for that. But I am offering you honesty, respect, and a chance to build something together. Is that not worth more than pretty words?" Theresa looked away, her throat suddenly tight. When was the last time anyone had offered her anything at all? In Philadelphia, she had been invisible, just another aging spinster seamstress with no prospects and no future beyond her needle and thread. "It is worth considering," she said quietly. That evening, after another substantial meal that Theresa prepared, they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. The sky blazed with orange and pink, and the air grew cool and sweet with the scent of pine. "Tell me about your life in Philadelphia," Austin said. "What was it like?" Theresa considered the question. "Crowded, noisy." "After my husband died, I moved in with my mother to help care for her. I took in sewing to earn money. It was a small life, a quiet life. Not unpleasant, but not particularly fulfilling either." "Did you never think of remarrying?" "A few men expressed interest over the years, but nothing came of it. I suppose I was not particularly motivated to pursue it. Then my mother became ill, and caring for her took all my time and energy. And after she passed, I realized I had no reason to stay in Philadelphia. No family left, no real friends, just the same four walls and the same endless stream of sewing. When I saw your father's advertisement, it felt like a sign." Austin nodded slowly. "I am glad you responded to it. Even if the circumstances turned out differently than you expected." "So am I," Theresa admitted, "though I am still not certain this is wise." "Why not?" She turned to look at him in the fading light. "Because you are young, Austin. You have your whole life ahead of you. You should not be saddling yourself with a woman 12 years your senior. There you go again, focusing on age as if it is the only thing that matters." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Can I tell you what I see when I look at you, Theresa, if you must? I see a woman who is strong and capable. Someone who has faced loss and kept going. Someone who can cook and clean and ride a horse and probably do 100 other things I have not even discovered yet. I see someone who does not giggle or simper or play games. I see an equal." Theresa felt warmth spread through her chest, and she had to blink back unexpected tears. "That is quite a speech. It is the truth. Age is just a number, Theresa. What matters is who you are inside. You are very wise for 26, he smiled. Or perhaps you are just wise enough to recognize wisdom when you hear it. She laughed then, surprising herself. Now who is being flattering, still just telling the truth? The days began to blur together in a pleasant rhythm. Theresa fell into the routine of the ranch as if she had always been there. She cooked and cleaned, tended the neglected vegetable garden, and even helped Austin with some of the outdoor chores. She discovered that she had a knack for handling the chickens, and within a few days, she had organized the hen house and increased the egg production significantly. Austin was unfailingly respectful and kind, but Theresa began to notice the way his eyes followed her when he thought she was not looking. She noticed how he found excuses to be near her, helping with tasks she could easily manage alone, or sitting with her in the evenings to talk about everything and nothing. She tried to ignore the way her heart rate increased when he smiled at her, or the warmth that spread through her when their hands accidentally brushed as they worked together. This was supposed to be a practical arrangement, not a romance, but her body seemed to have other ideas. On the 5th evening of her stay, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Thunder cracked and lightning split the sky, and rain hammered against the roof of the house. Theresa stood at the window watching the violence of the weather with a mixture of awe and fear. "It is something, is it not?" Austin said from behind her. "Mountain storms always come on fierce and fast." "It is terrifying," she admitted. "You get used to it, though I will admit it is better to weather them with company than alone." She turned to find him closer than she had expected, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. "Austin, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I have decided to stay. If your offer still stands, I will marry you." His face transformed with joy so pure and unguarded that it took her breath away. "Are you certain?" "I am. This place feels more like home after 5 days than Philadelphia did after 34 years. And you are a good man. Better than I probably deserve." "No," he said firmly, reaching out to take her hand. His palm was warm and rough against hers. "You deserve everything good, Theresa. I will spend the rest of my life trying to give it to you." She looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. "We should be practical about this. It will be a marriage of partnership and companionship. Of course. We should not expect, that is, we do not have to, the physical aspects of marriage." She felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Austin squeezed her hand gently. "We will figure that out together in our own time. There is no rush. Let us just get to know each other first." She met his eyes, relieved by his understanding. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being patient with me, for seeing me as I am." He lifted her hand and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her eyes sting with tears. "I will always see you, Theresa. I promise you that." They were married 3 days later in Truckee by the local minister, with 2 witnesses pulled from the general store. Theresa wore her best dress, a deep green silk she had sewn herself, and Austin wore a suit that had belonged to his father but fit him well enough. The ceremony was brief and simple, just a few words spoken in a small church, but when Austin slipped the gold band onto her finger and kissed her gently on the lips, Theresa felt something shift deep inside her heart. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, and that night, Austin stayed true to his word about patience. He kissed her goodnight at the door to the larger bedroom, which was now officially hers, and retreated to his own smaller room without complaint. But Theresa found she could not sleep. She lay in the darkness listening to the sounds of the house settling, thinking about the man in the next room. Her husband. The word still felt strange in her mind. She thought about her first marriage, how awkward and fumbling their wedding night had been. 2 young people with no real idea of what they were doing. Her husband had been kind but uncertain, and their physical relationship had been dutiful rather than passionate. They had cared for each other, certainly, but she had always felt something was missing, some spark she read about in novels but never quite experienced. Now she was married again, to a man who was supposed to be too young for her but who made her feel things she had never felt before. Want, desire. A hunger that scared her with its intensity. Another week passed. Theresa and Austin settled into married life with surprising ease. They worked well together, their rhythms complementing each other naturally. He woke early to tend the animals while she prepared breakfast. They ate together, talking about the day's tasks, then went their separate ways to work. Evenings were spent on the porch or by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence. But there was a tension building between them, unspoken but impossible to ignore. Theresa noticed how Austin's gaze lingered on her more and more often. She caught herself watching him too, admiring the way he moved, the strength in his arms as he worked, the gentle kindness in his eyes. One afternoon, she was in the kitchen preparing preserves from the wild berries she had collected when Austin came in from mending fence. He had removed his shirt due to the heat, and she could not help but stare at his bare chest and shoulders, bronzed from the sun and sculpted by hard labor. He caught her looking and stopped. "I apologize. I should have put my shirt back on before coming inside." "No, it is, it is fine." She turned back to her work, feeling her face flame with embarrassment. Austin moved closer until he was standing beside her at the counter. "Theresa." "Yes, we are married. I am aware of that. It has been nearly 2 weeks." Her hand stilled on the wooden spoon she had been using to stir the preserves. "I know. I have been trying to be patient, to give you time, but I have to tell you that it is becoming increasingly difficult to sleep alone knowing my wife is in the next room." She turned to face him, her heart hammering. "I thought you wanted a marriage of companionship." "I do. But I also want you, Theresa. I have wanted you since the moment you stepped off that stage in Truckee. I thought it was just physical attraction at first, but every day I know you, I want you more. Not just your body, though God help me, I do want that. I want all of you. Your mind, your laughter, your strength, everything. I am 34 years old," she whispered. "I am not some blushing maiden. I do not want a blushing maiden. I want you exactly as you are." She reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. "I want you too. I have been trying not to, telling myself it is foolish, that I should be more sensible, but I cannot seem to help it." "Then stop trying to help it." He kissed her, and this was nothing like the chaste peck at their wedding. This was deep and hungry, his mouth claiming hers with a passion that made her knees weak. She gripped his bare shoulders for balance, feeling the heat of his skin beneath her palms, and kissed him back with 12 years of loneliness and longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably move this to the bedroom." "Probably," she agreed breathlessly. He swept her up in his arms, making her gasp and laugh, and carried her through the house to the larger bedroom. He laid her down on the bed gently, as if she were something precious and fragile. "I need you to know something," he said, kneeling beside the bed and taking her hand. "I have been with women before, not many but enough to know what I am doing. But I have never felt about any of them the way I feel about you." "And how do you feel about me?" "Like I could love you," he said simply. "Like I am already starting to love you." Theresa felt tears spring to her eyes. "I thought this was supposed to be practical." "Practical does not mean loveless." He kissed her hand, then her wrist, then the inside of her elbow. "Let me show you, Theresa. Let me show you how much I already care for you." What happened next was nothing like her first marriage. Austin was patient but passionate, tender but confident, and he made her feel things she had not known were possible. He kissed every inch of her skin, whispering how beautiful she was, how perfect, until she almost believed it. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of rightness that brought tears to her eyes. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "I have a confession," Austin said quietly. "What is that?" "When my father first showed me the responses to his advertisement, I was the one who chose your letter. He was leaning toward a younger woman, but I argued for you. I told him you sounded intelligent and practical, that those qualities were more valuable than youth. He finally agreed to write to you." Theresa lifted her head to look at him. "You chose me even before you met me." "I did, and I have not regretted it for a single moment. Even though I almost got back on that stage the day I arrived." He smiled and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Especially because you almost got back on that stage. It showed you had sense and self-respect. You did not just accept the situation because you were desperate. You stayed because you chose to, and that means everything." "I am glad I stayed. So am I." He kissed the top of her head. "So very glad." The summer faded into autumn, and Theresa found herself falling more in love with her husband and her new life with each passing day. The work was hard, as Austin had warned, but it was satisfying in a way her old life had never been. She could see the direct results of her labor in the well-tended house, the thriving garden, the increased egg production from the chickens. Austin proved to be an attentive and affectionate husband. He brought her wildflowers when he came in from the pastures, helped her with the heavy household tasks without being asked, and made love to her with a passion that left her breathless and amazed. She had never imagined that physical intimacy could be like this, so all-consuming and yet so tender. They talked about everything during their long evenings together. He told her stories about growing up on the ranch, about his mother who had died too young, about his father's quiet strength and wisdom. She told him about her life in Philadelphia, her first husband, her years caring for her mother. They shared their hopes and dreams, their fears and insecurities, building a foundation of trust and understanding that went far deeper than mere physical attraction. One crisp October morning, Theresa woke feeling queasy. She dismissed it at first, thinking perhaps she had eaten something that disagreed with her. But when the nausea persisted for several days, accompanied by a tenderness in her breasts and a bone-deep exhaustion, she began to suspect the truth. She waited another week to be certain before telling Austin. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill when she finally spoke. "Austin, I need to tell you something." He turned to her, his expression immediately concerned. "What is it?" "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. I am pregnant." He stared at her for a long moment, his eyes wide with shock, then slowly a grin spread across his face. "Truly, truly. I am fairly certain, at least. All the signs are there." He whooped with joy and pulled her into his arms, kissing her face repeatedly. "A baby! We are going to have a baby." She laughed at his enthusiasm, but then felt a flutter of worry. "Austin, I am 34 years old. Having a baby at my age carries risks." He pulled back to look at her seriously. "Then we will be extra careful. We will get the doctor from Truckee to check on you regularly. We will make sure you do not overwork yourself, whatever it takes to keep you and the baby safe. You are not worried. Of course I am worried. But I am also happy, happier than I can remember being in a very long time." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child, Theresa, a piece of both of us." Tears welled in her eyes. "I never thought I would have this. After my husband died, after all those years alone, I thought my chance at motherhood had passed." "You are exactly the age you need to be," Austin said firmly. "Right here, right now with me, Everything is as it should be. She kissed him softly. I love you, Austin. I do not think I have told you that clearly enough, but I do. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you too, Theresa. From the moment I saw you standing in the street in Truckee with that determined look on your face, trying to decide whether to stay or go. I love your strength, your intelligence, your kindness. I love the way you sing while you work, even though you cannot carry a tune. I love the way you wrinkle your nose when you are concentrating. I love everything about you. They sat together as the last light faded from the sky, holding each other and talking quietly about the future. They would need to prepare a nursery, Austin said. He could convert the small room he had been using into a space for the baby. They would need a cradle, baby clothes, all manner of supplies. Theresa smiled at his eagerness, feeling some of her own anxiety ease. The next day, they rode into Truckee together to see the doctor and confirm her suspicions. Dr. Henderson was a gruff man in his 60s who had been practicing medicine in the area since before the railroad came through. He examined Theresa thoroughly, asked her numerous questions, and finally confirmed what she already knew. You are indeed pregnant, Mrs. Brennan. I would estimate about 2 months along, which means you should expect the baby to arrive sometime in late May. And her age, Austin asked. Is that a concern? Dr. Henderson looked at Theresa thoughtfully. It can be. Women over 30 face increased risks during pregnancy and childbirth. However, you appear to be in excellent health, Mrs. Brennan. If you take care of yourself, avoid excessive physical strain, and come see me regularly for checkups, I see no reason why you should not have a successful pregnancy. Relief flooded through Theresa. Thank you, doctor. As they left the doctor's office, Austin squeezed her hand. See, everything is going to be fine. I hope so. I know so. He helped her into the wagon and climbed up beside her. Now, what do you say we stop by the general store and look at baby things? She laughed. The baby will not be here for 7 more months. So, I want to start preparing now. I want to make sure we have everything we need. They spent an hour in the general store, looking at tiny clothes and blankets, discussing what they would need to purchase and what they could make themselves. Theresa, with her sewing skills, was confident she could create much of the baby's layette. But Austin insisted on buying a beautiful hand-carved rattle that had caught his eye. The baby will not be able to use this for months, Theresa protested. I do not care. I want to buy it now. He paid the shopkeeper and tucked the rattle carefully into his coat pocket. Our first purchase for our child. The ride back to the ranch was peaceful, both of them lost in their own thoughts about the changes ahead. When they arrived home, Austin helped her down from the wagon and then suddenly swept her up into his arms again. What are you doing? She asked, laughing. Carrying my pregnant wife over the threshold properly. I did not do it when we first got married, so I am doing it now. You are ridiculous. You love me anyway. I do, she admitted, wrapping her arms around his neck. God help me, I really do. Winter descended on the ranch with a vengeance. By late November, snow began to fall in earnest, blanketing the mountains and pastures in white. Austin had prepared well, moving the cattle to lower pastures and stocking the house with enough supplies to last through the worst of the storms. Theresa found herself grateful for the isolation during those cold months. Her pregnancy was progressing well, but the morning sickness lingered longer than she had expected, and the exhaustion made even simple tasks feel monumental some days. Austin was endlessly patient, taking over many of the household chores without complaint and insisting she rest whenever she looked tired. I am not an invalid, she protested one afternoon when he tried to take the laundry basket from her hands. I know that. But you are carrying our child, and I want to help make that easier for you however I can." She softened, as she always did when he looked at her with such tender concern. "You are going to spoil me." "Good." He kissed her forehead. "You deserve to be spoiled." On the days when the weather was too harsh for outdoor work, they spent hours by the fire together. Austin carved a beautiful cradle from pine wood, working slowly and carefully to make sure every joint was perfect. Theresa sewed tiny gowns and blankets, her needle flying through the soft fabric as she created a wardrobe for their expected child. Sometimes they talked about names. Austin liked traditional names, strong and simple. Theresa leaned toward family names, wanting to honor those who had come before. They debated and discussed, never quite settling on anything definite but enjoying the process nonetheless. "What if it is a boy?" Austin asked one evening. "Then we name him something appropriately masculine." "What about Jacob, after my father?" Theresa considered this. "Jacob Brennan. It has a good sound to it." "And if it is a girl, what about your mother's name?" "My mother was named Margaret. Somehow I cannot quite picture a tiny baby as a Margaret." Austin chuckled. "Fair point. We have time to decide. 7 months is a long way off." But time, Theresa discovered, had a way of moving both slowly and quickly. The days sometimes dragged, especially when she felt too ill or tired to do much of anything. But the weeks flew by, winter turning to early spring before she quite realized it. By April, her belly had swelled noticeably, and she could feel the baby moving inside her, small flutters at first and then stronger kicks. The first time she felt it, she had gasped and pressed her hand to her stomach in wonder. "What is it?" Austin had asked, immediately alarmed. "The baby." "I can feel the baby moving." His face had lit up with joy. "Can I feel?" She had guided his hand to the right spot and waited. After a moment, a tiny kick came and Austin's eyes went wide with amazement. "That is incredible. That is our child right there." "Our child," she had agreed, feeling her own sense of wonder and joy. As her due date approached, Dr. Henderson made the trip out to the ranch several times to check on her. Each time he pronounced her in good health, though he cautioned that the birth itself would be the true test. "I will plan to be here as you get closer to your time," he told them. "Send word when the labor pains start, and I will come as quickly as I can. But these mountain roads can be treacherous, even in spring. You should be prepared for the possibility that you might have to manage on your own, at least initially." Austin had gone pale at that prospect. "I do not know anything about delivering babies." "Most men do not, son, but women have been doing this since the dawn of time. Trust your wife's body to know what to do and be there to support her however she needs." After the doctor left, Austin had been quiet and worried. Theresa had taken his hand and squeezed it reassuringly. "I am not afraid," she told him. "Well, I am," he admitted. "I am terrified of something happening to you." "Nothing is going to happen to me. Women have babies every day. But you are not just any woman. You are my woman, my wife, my whole world, if I lost you." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. She pulled him into her arms, or as much as her swollen belly would allow. "You are not going to lose me. I promise." On a warm evening in late May, Theresa's water broke while she was preparing supper. She had felt odd all day, restless and uncomfortable, but had attributed it to the general misery of late pregnancy. When the sudden gush of fluid soaked her skirts, she knew immediately what was happening. "Austin," she called out, trying to keep her voice calm. He came running from the barn, taking one look at her and understanding immediately. The baby is coming." He helped her to the bedroom, his hands shaking slightly, then went to saddle his horse. "I am going to ride to Truckee and get Dr. Henderson." "That is a 2-hour ride round trip at best. The baby might not wait that long." Then I will ride as fast as I can." He kissed her forehead, his eyes full of fear and determination. "You just hold on, all right. I will be back as soon as possible." After he left, Theresa focused on breathing through the contractions that were coming with increasing frequency and intensity. She had helped her mother attend a few births over the years and had a basic understanding of what to expect. The pain was manageable at first, but as the hours passed, it built to a crescendo that left her gasping and crying out. She heard the thunder of hooves and voices, and then Austin was there along with Dr. Henderson, both men looking anxious and disheveled from their hard ride. "How are you doing, Mrs. Brennan?" the doctor asked, immediately moving to examine her. "It hurts," she managed between contractions. "That is entirely normal. You are doing well. The baby should be here within a few hours." Those few hours were the longest of Theresa's life. The pain was beyond anything she had imagined, waves of agony that threatened to overwhelm her. But Austin stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, whispering encouragement and love. "You are so strong," he told her. "So brave, I am in awe of you." Finally, as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Dr. Henderson announced that it was time to push. Theresa gathered every ounce of strength she had left and bore down, feeling her body strain with the effort. "That is it," the doctor encouraged. "Just like that. The head is crowning. One more good push." She pushed again, and suddenly there was a release of pressure and the room filled with the sound of a baby crying. "It is a boy," Dr. Henderson announced, holding up a red, squalling infant. "A fine, healthy boy." Austin let out a shout of joy and kissed Theresa's sweaty forehead repeatedly. "You did it! You did it! Oh God, Theresa, you were amazing." The doctor cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket, then placed him in Theresa's arms. She looked down at the tiny face, at the miniature features so perfect and beautiful, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." "He is perfect," Austin said, his voice choked with emotion. "Absolutely perfect. He has your eyes," Theresa said, noting the blue gaze that stared up at her with unfocused intensity. "And your nose." Dr. Henderson smiled at the new parents. "Congratulations to you both. Mother and baby both appear to be in excellent health. You did very well, Mrs. Brennan, especially for your first child at your age." After the doctor left, after Austin had seen to his horse and paid him generously for his services, they lay together in the bed with their son between them. The baby had nursed hungrily and then fallen asleep, his tiny fist curled against his cheek. "Jacob," Austin said softly. "We should name him Jacob after my father." Theresa nodded. "Jacob Austin Brennan. It is perfect." "He is perfect," Austin corrected, reaching out to stroke one tiny hand with his finger. "You are both perfect." "I was so scared," Theresa admitted. "Not of the pain, but of failing somehow, of not being strong enough." "You were more than strong enough. You were incredible." He looked up at her and she saw tears in his eyes. "I love you so much, Theresa. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for choosing to stay when you could have left. Thank you for taking a chance on me." "I should be thanking you," she said. "You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. A home, a purpose, love. Real love, the kind I did not even know existed until I met you." He kissed her softly. "We gave each other a life. That is what partnership means." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their son sleep, marveling at the miracle they had created together. "Do you remember what you said when we first met?" Theresa asked. "When I told you I was too old for you, I said you were exactly the age I needed. You were right about everything." "Well, I am occasionally wise beyond my years." She laughed softly, careful not to wake the baby. "Occasionally." The first few weeks with baby Jacob were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings. Theresa had read books about infant care, but nothing quite prepared her for the reality of having a newborn. The baby seemed to need something every moment of every day, and she was exhausted in a way she had never experienced before. But Austin was there every step of the way. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with Jacob when he was fussy, and took over all the household chores so Theresa could rest when the baby slept. More than once, she woke in the night to find Austin sitting in the rocking chair by the window, their son cradled against his bare chest, both of them sleeping peacefully. The sight never failed to make her heart clench with love. As spring turned to summer, they settled into a rhythm. Jacob began to sleep for longer stretches at night, and Theresa started to feel more like herself again. She regained her strength and energy, though her body had changed in ways both expected and unexpected. There were stretch marks on her belly and hips, and her breasts were fuller from nursing. Sometimes she felt self-conscious about these changes, but Austin never seemed to notice anything but her beauty. "You created life," he told her when she mentioned her insecurities. "Your body did something miraculous. How could I see that as anything but beautiful?" By autumn, Jacob was crawling and getting into everything. He was a happy baby with an easy temperament, quick to smile and laugh. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair, and he was clearly going to be tall like Austin if his long legs were any indication. One afternoon, as Theresa sat on the porch watching Austin play with Jacob in the yard, she felt a contentment so deep and profound it brought tears to her eyes. A year ago, she had been alone in Philadelphia, convinced her life was essentially over, that all the good parts had passed her by. Now she had a husband she loved passionately, a beautiful son, and a home that filled her with joy. Austin looked up and caught her watching them. He said something to Jacob that made the baby laugh, then scooped him up and carried him over to the porch. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her with Jacob on his lap. "I am thinking about how wrong I was." "About what?" "When I said I was too old for you, I was not too old. I was exactly the right age to appreciate all of this, to recognize how precious and rare it is. A younger woman might have taken it for granted, but I never will. Every day feels like a gift." Austin shifted Jacob to one arm and put the other around Theresa's shoulders, pulling her close. "Every day with you is a gift to me. You and Jacob, you are everything I never knew I needed." "We should have more," Theresa said suddenly. "More what? More children. Not right away, but eventually. Jacob should have siblings." Austin's face lit up with joy. "Are you certain? Given what you went through with the birth, I am certain. It was hard, yes, but worth it." "Everything worth having is hard." "That is very philosophical of you." She elbowed him gently. "I can be philosophical." He kissed the top of her head. "You can be anything you want. That is one of the many things I love about you." The years flowed by like water, each season bringing new changes and challenges. When Jacob was 2, Theresa became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and she knew what to expect during the birth. In the spring of 1882, she delivered a healthy daughter they named Margaret after Theresa's mother, though they called her Maggie from the start. Maggie was more spirited than Jacob had been as a baby, demanding and loud, but also full of joy and laughter. She kept them all on their toes, and Jacob, now the protective older brother, followed her everywhere. 2 years after Maggie came another son, Thomas, who was quiet and thoughtful even as an infant. He rarely cried, seeming content to watch the world around him with serious dark eyes. With each pregnancy, each birth, Austin became more protective and devoted. He waited on Theresa hand and foot, worried constantly about her health, and was present for every delivery, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. 3 children, he said one evening as they sat on the porch watching their little ones play in the yard. Jacob was 6 now, Maggie 4, and Thomas 2. We have built quite a family. Are you happy? Theresa asked, though she knew the answer. Happy does not begin to cover it. Blessed, maybe. Grateful beyond words. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever regret it? Taking on a mail-order bride who turned out to be 12 years older than you? Never, not for a single moment. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. Theresa, you gave me everything. A home, not just a house. A family, not just children. Love, real and deep and lasting. How could I regret any of that? I love you, she said simply. More now than I did the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is the most romantic thing you have ever said to me. I am growing sentimental in my old age, he laughed. You are 42, not ancient. I feel ancient sometimes, running after 3 children. Then we are both ancient because I cannot keep up with them either. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play as the sun set behind the mountains. Jacob was teaching Maggie how to catch fireflies while Thomas toddled between them, laughing at their antics. We did good, Austin said finally. We did very good, Theresa agreed. As the children grew, the ranch prospered. Austin's hard work and careful management paid off, and they were able to expand their operation, increasing their herd and even purchasing additional land from a neighbor who was retiring. They hired seasonal help during roundup and cattle drives, but the core of the ranch remained the family. Jacob grew into a strong, capable boy who loved the ranch life as much as his father did. By the time he was 10, he was already helping with serious work, riding fence lines and learning to rope and brand. Maggie was more interested in the domestic side, helping her mother with cooking and sewing, though she also had a fierce, independent streak that sometimes got her into trouble. Thomas remained quiet and thoughtful, preferring books to outdoor work when he could get away with it, though he pulled his weight without complaint. Theresa watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and bittersweet nostalgia. Where had the time gone? It seemed like just yesterday Jacob had been a tiny infant in her arms, and now he was nearly as tall as she was. One afternoon in late summer, when Theresa was 46 years old, she was working in the garden when a wave of dizziness washed over her. She sat down on the ground, breathing slowly until it passed, then returned to her work. But over the next few days the dizzy spells continued, along with a familiar queasiness that made her heart sink. No, she thought. It could not be. She was too old now, surely. Jacob was 12, Maggie 10, Thomas 8. She had assumed her childbearing years were behind her, but her body told a different story. The signs were unmistakable, and when she finally confirmed it with Dr. Henderson, the old physician looked concerned. "You are sure?" she asked. "Quite sure." "About 3 months along, I would estimate. Mrs. Brennan, I must be frank with you. Having a baby at your age carries significant risks. Your body is not what it was in your 30s. I know that. I am going to insist on monthly checkups at minimum. And at the first sign of any complications, I want you to send for me immediately." She nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and unexpected joy. Another child. She had not expected this gift, but now that it was coming, she found she wanted it with all her heart. Telling Austin was harder than she expected. They were alone in their bedroom that night, and she watched his face carefully as she spoke the words, "I am pregnant again." He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Are you certain?" The doctor confirmed it today. "What did he say?" "About your age, I mean. That there are risks, but there are always risks with childbirth." Austin sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "I am scared, Theresa. I am 40 years old and I am terrified." When you had Thomas, I thought that was the last time I would have to watch you go through that pain and danger. Now we are starting over again." She sat beside him and took his hand. "We do not have to start over. We already know how to do this. And we have 3 healthy children to prove that we are good at it. You almost died when Maggie was born. You lost so much blood that Dr. Henderson was not sure you would make it. But I did make it. I am still here, still strong. You were younger then, only 4 years younger. Austin, I am scared too, but I am also happy. We are going to have another child. That is a blessing, not a curse." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "If anything happens to you, I will not survive it. Nothing is going to happen to me. I am too stubborn to die." He laughed despite himself. That is true enough. The pregnancy was harder than her previous ones. The exhaustion was more profound, the aches and pains more intense. There were days when she could barely get out of bed, and Austin took over most of the household duties with help from Maggie. The children knew their mother was expecting another baby, and they hovered around her protectively, especially Jacob, who remembered how sick she had been when Thomas was born. Winter came and went, and Theresa grew enormous, her belly stretching beyond anything she remembered from previous pregnancies. "I think there might be 2 in there," she joked to Austin one night. "Do not even say that," he replied, though his hand was gentle as he rubbed her swollen belly. As her due date approached in early spring of 1889, Dr. Henderson made arrangements to stay at the ranch for the final week, not wanting to risk a difficult birth happening when he could not get there in time. The labor, when it finally started, was long and difficult. Theresa labored for almost 20 hours, and there were moments when she truly thought she might not survive it. The pain was beyond anything she remembered, and she could see the fear in Austin's eyes as he held her hand and whispered encouragement. But finally, she pushed one last time and heard the doctor announce, "It is a girl." Theresa collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure. But before she could even hold the baby, Dr. Henderson said urgently, "Wait, there is another one." Austin went white. "What?" "Twins," the doctor said grimly. "There is another baby. Theresa, I need you to push again." She did not think she had the strength, but somehow she found it. 10 minutes later, another baby emerged, smaller than the first but crying just as lustily. "Another girl," Dr. Henderson announced. "Congratulations, you have twin daughters." Theresa started to laugh and cry at the same time, too exhausted to do anything else. Austin stood frozen, staring at the 2 babies the doctor was cleaning and wrapping. "Twins," he finally managed. "We have twins." "I told you I thought there were 2, Theresa said weakly. He moved to her side, tears streaming down his face. "You are incredible. You are the strongest person I have ever known. I love you so much. I love you too. Now let me see my daughters." The babies were placed in her arms, 1 in each, and Theresa looked down at the 2 tiny faces in wonder. They were identical, with the same dark hair and delicate features. "What should we name them?" Austin asked. "I have no idea," Theresa admitted. "I only thought of names for 1 baby." Over the next few days, they debated and discussed while the twins slept and nursed and grew stronger. Finally, they settled on Sarah and Sophie, names that were similar but distinct enough to avoid confusion. The older children were fascinated by the twins. Jacob, now 12, was protective and gentle. Maggie, 10, wanted to help with everything and had to be reminded to be careful. Thomas, 8, seemed slightly overwhelmed by the sudden chaos but adapted quickly. The first year with twins was the hardest thing Theresa had ever done. There were times she thought she would collapse from exhaustion, but somehow she and Austin managed. They worked as a team, taking turns with night feedings, supporting each other when one of them was at the end of their rope. "I am getting too old for this," Theresa said one night after being up for the third time with a crying baby. "Remember when you told me you were too old for me?" Austin replied, taking the fussy infant from her arms and settling her against his shoulder. "And I said you were exactly the age I needed. The same is true now. You are exactly the age you need to be the mother these children need." How do you always know the right thing to say? Years of practice. As the twins grew, the chaos gradually became manageable. By their first birthday, they were sleeping through the night more often than not, and Theresa began to feel like herself again. She was 47 now, and she could feel her age in ways she never had before. There were more aches, more gray in her hair, more lines on her face. But when she looked in the mirror, she also saw a woman who was deeply loved and happy. The years continued to pass. Jacob grew into a young man, taking on more and more responsibility on the ranch. At 16, he was already as capable as many grown men, and Austin relied on him heavily. Maggie blossomed into a beautiful young woman with her mother's practical nature and her father's easy smile. Thomas remained bookish, but had developed an interest in breeding and bloodlines, spending hours studying the cattle and making suggestions for improving the herd. The twins, Sarah and Sophie, were 5 now, inseparable and full of mischief. They had Austin wrapped around their little fingers, and he spoiled them shamelessly. "You are too soft with them," Theresa told him one evening. "They are my babies. I am allowed to be soft. They are going to grow up thinking they can get away with anything." "They can," he said simply. "At least from me." She shook her head but smiled. After all these years, he could still make her heart flutter with just a look. One afternoon in autumn, Theresa was sitting on the porch watching the children play when Austin joined her. He was 53 now, his sandy hair gone mostly gray, lines etched deeply around his eyes and mouth. But to her, he was still the young man who had met her at the stage and asked her to stay. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about how lucky I am, how lucky we are. Tell me." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. 20 years ago, I stepped off a stagecoach expecting to meet a man named Jacob Brennan. Instead, I met you, and you were nothing like what I expected. You were younger, more handsome, more kind. I thought I was too old for you, that the age difference made the whole situation impossible. But I convinced you otherwise. You did. You told me I was exactly the age you needed, and somehow you made me believe it. And you were right, Austin. I was exactly the right age to appreciate this life, to recognize what a gift it is. A younger woman might have taken it all for granted, but I never have, not for a single day. I was the lucky one, Austin said. I got to build a life with a woman who was mature enough to be a true partner, wise enough to handle the challenges we faced, and strong enough to give me 5 beautiful children. You were exactly what I needed, Theresa. You still are. Do you ever regret it? Marrying someone older, someone who is now in her 50s while you are still in your early 50s? Never. Age is just a number, remember. What matters is what is in here. He placed his hand over her heart. And your heart is as young and strong as it ever was. She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their children play in the golden afternoon light. Jacob was teaching the twins how to skip stones in the creek, while Maggie helped Thomas with something involving a notebook and pencil, probably more of his breeding calculations. "We made a good life," she said softly. "We made a great life," Austin corrected, "and it keeps getting better." The seasons turned as they always did. The children continued to grow and change. Jacob, at 19, began courting a girl from town, a sweet-natured young woman named Emma who fit into the family seamlessly. Maggie, at 17, had suitors lining up, but had not yet found anyone who interested her enough to encourage. Thomas, at 15, remained focused on his studies and the ranch, showing no interest in romance yet. The twins at 8 were still wild and carefree, unaware that childhood would not last forever. Theresa was 54 now, and Austin was 56. They were grandparents as of last year when Jacob and Emma married, and had a son they named Austin Jacob. Theresa had cried when they announced the name, moved beyond words that they would honor Austin that way. Being a grandmother was different than being a mother. There was still love, fierce and protective, but without the same weight of constant responsibility. She could enjoy her grandson and then hand him back when he was fussy or needed changing. It was, she thought, rather wonderful. One evening, she and Austin sat on the porch alone. The children were all occupied elsewhere, the twins in bed, the older children busy with their own activities. It was a rare moment of solitude, and they savored it. "You remember the first time I kissed you?" Austin asked suddenly. "Of course. It was after I decided to stay before we were married. You kissed me after we argued about age differences." "No, I mean really kissed you. The day you agreed to marry me when the storm was raging outside." She smiled at the memory. "I remember. You told me you were starting to love me." "I did not tell you the whole truth that day." She turned to look at him, curious. "What do you mean?" "I did not tell you that I already loved you. I had been falling in love with you from the moment you stepped off that stage and looked at me like I was a problem you needed to solve. I loved your strength, your directness, your refusal to be impressed by anything less than honesty. I just did not want to scare you off by saying it too soon." "Austin Brennan, are you telling me you lied to me?" "I am telling you I was not quite as honest as I could have been." "There is a difference," she laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet evening. "After all these years, you are still full of surprises. I have a few more secrets left in me. Tell me." He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Every morning when I wake up next to you, I am grateful. Every single morning, without fail, I think about how my life would have been without you, and I cannot even imagine it. You are woven into every part of me, Theresa. You are in every sunrise I see, every fence I mend, every decision I make. You are not just my wife, you are my whole world." Tears sprang to her eyes. "That is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. It is just the truth. 21 years we have been married, and I love you more now than I did on our wedding day. I loved you then because of who you were. I love you now because of who we have become together." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, a kiss full of 21 years of love and partnership and devotion. "I love you too, Austin, more than words can say." They sat together as the stars came out, holding hands and remembering. All the struggles and joys, the births and losses, the laughter and tears. It had been a good life, a rich life, full of love and purpose. "What do you think will happen next?" Theresa asked. "Where will life take us from here?" "I do not know," Austin admitted. "But wherever it takes us, we will go together. That is all that matters." "Together," she agreed. "Always together." The years that followed brought more changes. Jacob and Emma had 3 children in quick succession, giving Theresa and Austin a house full of grandchildren to spoil. Maggie finally found a man who matched her spirit, a teacher from town who appreciated her intelligence and independence. They married when she was 20 and moved to Sacramento, though they visited often. Thomas surprised everyone by deciding to attend university, studying agriculture and animal husbandry formally. He returned to the ranch with new ideas and methods that helped increase productivity and profits. He married late, at 32, to a widow with 2 children of her own, and they blended their families seamlessly. The twins grew into beautiful young women, still close as ever. Sarah became a teacher like Maggie's husband, while Sophie married a banker and moved to San Francisco. They wrote frequently and visited as often as they could. Through it all, Austin and Theresa remained the center of the family, the foundation on which everything else was built. They were in their 60s now, moving a little slower but still active and engaged with the ranch and their children and grandchildren. One spring morning, Theresa was in the garden planting vegetables when Austin came to find her. He was 66 now, his hair completely white, his face deeply lined. But his eyes were still the same brilliant blue, and when he smiled at her, she saw the young man he had been. "Come take a ride with me," he said. "I am in the middle of planting. It can wait. Come on like we used to do." She brushed the dirt from her hands and let him help her to her feet. They saddled horses, something they had not done together in months, and rode out into the hills beyond the ranch. It was a beautiful day, warm and clear, with wildflowers blooming across the meadows. They rode in comfortable silence until they reached a high point with a view of the entire valley spread out below them. The ranch looked small from here, a cluster of buildings and fenced pastures in the vast landscape. "You remember the first time I brought you out here?" Austin asked. "I do. You wanted to show me the scope of the ranch, to help me understand what kind of life you were offering. And what do you think now, all these years later? Was it the life you hoped for?" Theresa looked at him, at the man who had been her partner for over 30 years now. They had built something together, something lasting and good. They had raised 5 children who were all happy and settled. They had weathered storms, both literal and figurative. They had loved each other through youth and middle age and now into their older years. "It was better than I hoped for," she said honestly. "I thought I was coming here for a marriage of convenience, a practical arrangement that would give me security and purpose. Instead, I found love, real, deep, lasting love. I found a partner who sees me as an equal, who values my strength as much as my softness. I found a home in every sense of the word." "I am glad," Austin said simply, "because you gave me all of that too. You turned a house into a home, a ranch into a legacy. You gave me children and grandchildren, love and laughter. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything." He dismounted and helped her down, and they stood together looking out at the valley. Austin put his arm around her waist and she leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. "You remember what you said when we first met?" Austin asked. "When you told me you were too old for me." "I remember everything about that day. You were wrong, you know. You were not too old for me then, and you are not too old for me now. You are exactly the age I need at every stage of our lives together. You always have been." Theresa felt tears stream down her face, but they were happy tears. "I was such a fool to think age mattered more than character. You were cautious, and rightly so, but I am glad I convinced you to take a chance on us. So am I." They stood there for a long time, watching the sun move across the sky, neither of them feeling the need to fill the silence with words. Some things were beyond words, too deep and profound for mere language. The love they shared was one of those things. Eventually they rode back to the ranch, where grandchildren were waiting to greet them and work was waiting to be done. But for those few hours on the hillside, it had been just the two of them, just as it had been in the beginning. That night, as they lay in bed together in the darkness, Theresa said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing past my age to who I really was. For giving me a chance when I was ready to give up. For loving me so well for so many years." Austin pulled her closer. "Thank you for staying. For taking a risk on a young cowboy who did not know what he was doing but knew he needed you. For building this life with me. For loving me back." "Always," she whispered. "I will always love you. And I will always love you until my last breath and beyond." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would last for all time. The years continued their steady march, as they always did. Austin and Theresa grew older together, their bodies slower but their love undiminished. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary with all 5 children and 14 grandchildren gathered at the ranch, a joyous occasion filled with laughter and memories. 40 years, Austin said in his speech at the celebration. 40 years, married to the woman who came to California thinking she was too old for me. 40 years of proving every single day that she was wrong about that. 40 years of partnership, friendship, and love. I am the luckiest man alive. Theresa stood beside him, tears in her eyes, her hand in his. And I am the luckiest woman. This cowboy convinced me I was exactly the age he needed, and he was right. He has been right about everything that matters. As the sun set on the celebration, Theresa looked around at the family they had created together. Children and grandchildren, all healthy and happy, all loved and loving. This was their legacy, not just the ranch but the people, the love that would continue long after they were gone. She thought about the woman she had been when she stepped off that stagecoach in Truckee all those years ago. Scared, uncertain, convinced her best years were behind her. How wrong she had been. Her best years had just been beginning, starting the moment a young cowboy with blue eyes and an honest smile had asked her to stay. "What are you thinking?" Austin asked, coming to stand beside her. "I am thinking about beginnings and endings. About how sometimes the best chapters of our lives start when we least expect them." "And what chapter are we in now?" She smiled and took his hand. "The happily ever after chapter. The one where we get to enjoy everything we built together and watch our family flourish." "That sounds like a perfect ending." "It is not an ending," she corrected gently. "It is a continuation. Our love will continue through our children and their children. That is what makes it all worthwhile." Austin kissed her forehead, a gesture he had made thousands of times over their decades together, but which still made her heart flutter. "You are exactly the age I need," he whispered, repeating the words he had said so many years ago. "And you are everything I never knew I needed," she replied. They stood together watching the last light fade from the sky, surrounded by the evidence of their love in every direction. The ranch they had built, the family they had raised, the life they had created. It was more than either of them had ever dreamed possible. And it had all started because a mail-order bride said she was too old for him, and a cowboy said she was exactly the age he needed. Everything after that was just love, pure and simple and lasting. The kind of love that conquers all obstacles, including age and doubt and fear. The kind of love that builds legacies. The kind of love that lasts forever.